Again, visual dynamic is quite often something that we think about a lot, and I think one of the people who formalized it in a way that was most enlightening, if you pardon the pun, you go back to Kandinsky and you think about Kandinsky and his relationship to sound and so forth. And I mean, one of the things that I'm interested in is I saw that Gunther Schuller had made a kind of staged presentation in the early 80s of this wonderful work of Kandinsky that he did with a composer called Die Gelbe Klang, the golden sound, and yellow sound, because for Kandinsky all these things were kind of direct metaphors. We know this with Messiaen, we know this with Scriabin. Of course it goes on and on and on. And we know this in a really crude way. If you turn on your iTunes and you select visual representation, you get some kind of graphic display. So it's something that we're really interested in. It turns out that it's very, very complex, and it's something that's very hard to work with because the ear and the eye compete in some way for attention. So trying to find a way in which one can do something that's more sophisticated than commercial film. In commercial film, not to be overly critical, the music's kind of a perfume. It's a kind of an emotional perfume that is designed to manipulate in a certain way. What I'm interested in is very complex contrapuntal relationships. This goes into music history. One of the greatest things about Western music history is the idea of stratification. So when we saw Jean-Marc Bustamante the other day talk about the visual layering, the strata, his desire, which I can't wait to see it really as opposed to in a catalog or a representation as a screenshot, but the idea that one really has these layers that are living behind one another. Those layers presuppose different strata which simultaneously exist. That's our lives. That's our existence. And right now, if you close your eyes and you try to imagine all of the different rhythms and rates of energy that are pulsing through your body, there are ones that we can feel, like the heart. You can hear your heartbeat. You have a rate of breathing. Now this is changing from second to second. But then there are the longer scale ones, the circadian rhythms. There's a guy who went and lived in a cave for almost 2/3 of a year. This guy recently died. That's why I'm speaking about it. And he discovered there were some circadian rhythms that only recurred like every 9 or 10 days. Well, what are the ones that recur over months, over years? I mean, we have all these levels of time inside of us, but we're just not able to bring our consciousness, yet they're still there and they still exist. That's what Western music does that's different than some other musics. We have these different layers of time which are present, and these different strata which are present. So when you're looking at image and you're listening to sound, it's the relationship which exists between those two things, not to create competition, but to create that third thing, which is a fusion or a higher thing than either one of them by themselves. That's what the aim would be. It's a very high aim because it's not decorative. And so for me, the process is a really difficult one because you have to be able, somebody at some point has to be able to back off. What that means is in counterpoint, you have points of arrival, then the voices go off. There's a certain harmony that governs the structure, and there's certain kind of rule-based behavior. Well, let's say we don't have those rules. So the only rules are what you can find that works in a given scenario. I'll give you a recent example in working with Elliot on this project, Shemayim. The second section, we had laid out a kind of an aim, a structural aim. And I had given him a first rough cut of music that I'd been working on for 6 months. So he had this, he's an extremely careful listener, and he came back to me with his first rough cut of what the image was going to be. So at one point, I had a structure that went sort of roughly like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So what he did was 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then all of a sudden about 8 minutes. So where I had some structural breaks, he didn't. And he had about 8 minutes of almost completely unchanging cloud shot, very, very slow changing. I mean, so you were looking at this very gray, ominous sky for about 8 minutes. And so the music that I had written for those two places did not work. I mean, it distracted very much from the sort of stasis and presence that he was trying to create through his 8 minutes. So I had to go back and make lots and lots and lots of different kinds of experiments to try to see if I could find a way to create this counterpoint which would work between the two things. Then I wrote the music, changed it, and then he changed the image, and we went back and forth this way. And so it was really, to me, fascinating. And to the degree that that project works, it works because the two things are allowed their own space, and yet there's a larger structure and perspective which is working architecturally very carefully underneath.